part of the show, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right. There you
Is
go.
that better?
That is better.
Yeah. Kind of weird.
Well, that's all right.
That's weird. I mean, I don't normally do my phone, but the camera really sucks on my laptop. So.
Well, looks good. Sounds good. So.
All right. Cool. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Cool. Well, thanks for agreeing to talk to me. I just started this this YouTube page. It's supposed to. I did it like a month ago to try to bring attention to the book I have that's going to be coming out
Yeah.
October 10th, I guess. And at first I was just talking to people that were in the book. Then I very quickly went, well, I can talk with whoever the hell I want.
Yeah, it's sort of an extension of the book, I guess.
Yeah.
In that way.
And also, I interviewed you for one of my man-child books a long time ago.
That's right. Oh, I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah. So I just thought, what the hell, But anyway, it's nice to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. You too. You're really small, tiny, but that's okay.
Yeah. I'll try to lean in and lean out.
No, that's okay.
Well, but anyway,
here, why don't I switch it? There, I can see you and not me so much. That's the way it should be anyway.
No.
Technology.
Yeah, please. So it's been a pretty weird year, I would say.
Yeah.
How's that?
For sure.
But you managed to get your new record released like not too long ago, and it's really good.
Thank you.
So thanks for that. And it's called For anyone that might be tuning in, Kenny Roby is this guy that's lived here that I've known for a really long time. He's been a musician, singer, songwriter for a very long time. You were originally from South Carolina, if I remember.
Yeah, I spent most of my formative years, I guess, from like second grade till graduated from high school in Clemson, South Carolina, upstate South Carolina. Lived in Charleston a little bit before then, but yeah, pretty much raised in upstate South Carolina. Right. And then I moved up to Raleigh in '91.
Okay, so it was that long ago. Oh. Yeah. Time flies.
Yeah, a long time ago. Right. God, that's a lot of years. I can't even do the math. It's so many years.
It all just blends together anyway.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not really big on celebrating. 40 years ago, this nice thing happened. Let's mark the passing of time and get kind of reckon our mortality by looking at how much time has passed and how maybe some of us feel kind of the same. But anyway, Kenny, you have the Reservoir came out like what, 3 weeks ago? A month ago?
A little, more than that. It was August 7th. Yep.
Oh, it was that long ago?
Yeah, it was actually supposed to come out in June, but then we pushed it to August thinking, oh, well, maybe we could tour in October. But as you know, that ain't happening.
Did you have any plans formulated for the start of this year before all this crazy stuff happened that you had to cancel or put on a shelf or anything?
We were just starting to, I was just looking for someone to help me start booking the tour, looking for a new booking agent, hopefully, for the summer. So it was just about that time, and then everything sort of fell apart, and then there was, nobody was even on the phone anymore, on their laptops, worried about it, within a matter of a few weeks, like, and then some bigger people were like, oh, we're pushing our dates from, May and June to like the fall, and then those dates got pushed for everybody. So I didn't have anything solid. I mean, the tour was the plan. The tour was the plan. The plan was to tour, all over the U.S. for the record. We just didn't have any dates yet.
Right. Well, how have you been doing? What has the normal day been like for you? Are you just kind of hanging out, doing press, and just existing, and just trying to push your record and just stay busy? And
just trying to adjust. Yeah, just adjust and do everything. Yeah, do everything online. I haven't done too much streaming stuff. I've made me and the guys who were on the record went back to the same studio here in Woodstock, and recorded. We did like some live video and live versions of those songs, some of them, and a few covers, to possibly do a live EP and also have video for it. So hopefully that'll come out in the next few months. Things like that, sort of pre-recorded things to stream later. But I haven't done a whole lot of live. I've done some recordings, like live video here at my place, or out in the woods, to give to radio stations, because a lot of radio stations, because you can't do on air appearances, they're just having you video or stream in and doing interviews and stuff that way. So
right. Yeah, I noticed that you did a couple of videos came out. All Trains Laid to Cocaine was one, and then you did Silver Moon. Maybe there's another one I might have missed.
Old Love was the first single. Yeah. Okay. Old Love, actually, we played, me and the guys who were on the record played opening for Circles Around the Sun at the Brooklyn Bowl on, I guess, February 28th. And then the 29th, we shot the video in the morning for Old Love. And then by the time I got home from New York later that week, the shit was starting to hit the fan. So, during the pandemic, the guys, the video director and editor worked on the video, and then it came out like a month before the record did. So there's been that official video, and then the Silver Moon animated video that just came out.
Yeah.
And then I've done some just fun stuff at home, making public domain, collages and stuff, just to have some content. It's just fun. I like doing that stuff, actually. Gives me something to do with my time. I like the focus of it. It's sort of meditative a little bit. I just kind of get zoned out, or zoned in and work on it. So some people hate that stuff, but I like it. Anything to avoid playing guitar, practicing.
Right. Well, how was the I really like the album. I think it's my favorite one since Rather Not Know, which for me kind of remains sort of which is not to discount anything else, or because I like it all. But how has the reaction been for the record? It seems like it's gone over pretty well. From what I can see.
It has. Yeah, like the response I'm getting from listeners and from radio people and from press, podcasters, friends, has been super positive. People seem to relate to it a lot. I mean, there's a lot of isolation on that record, and
there's a lot of isolation right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who would have known that it would be so apropos?
Your record and the new Napalm Death have both crystallized this year in terms of that.
Who would have thought, So extremely different, but it's the same all at once.
And yet kind of very similar at the same time, somehow, for me.
Yeah, well, whatever, right? That's the way I am, I'll listen to an Andy Gibb song, and the melody reminds me of something that was like Bob Dylan or something. Like, what? How'd you get there? I have these strange connections and associations with stuff. Weird melodies trigger weird things with me.
Yeah, from songs. I know you subscribe to my attitude of there's only two kinds of music, good and bad, and that's it.
Yeah, and the music I like is good, and the music you like is bad. No, I'm just kidding. Not you specifically, but other people besides us. No.
Yeah, we're the only ones that like good music. That's right. That's absolutely the real reason I wanted to talk to you. Everybody else,
audience of two.
Bunch of losers. But
yeah, absolutely. No, of course we're being silly. But it's been really positive. I mean, people seem to be kind of getting it, and getting a lot out of it. And it's a record I think you got to kind of just sit and listen to, and take in. Not, I would hope they all are, but it seems like that kind of.
It definitely does
work, and people have time to do that now.
Yeah. So it's a perfect time putting out this record during a pandemic.
Yeah,
it's like you're not going anywhere. You might as well absorb the whole thing. But and I was reading like the first thing after it. I don't have the information for like where you recorded it or even the lyrics because I been into the Bandcamp thing.
Hmm.
So, but I read, I think like the day after I bought it, listened to it, I think I read an interview, and the interview sort of, you touched on that you had kind of, and we don't have to go really into this, whatever, but that you had sort of, recent times of, shall we say, change, I guess, in your life, and that
Hmm.
this record might have reflected some of the changes you went through and just life changing and whatever. Did any of that stuff that I'm not really going to touch on, did that influence? Did that?
Oh, I mean, I don't, it's out there as far as that, I just sort of, had some relationship stuff, long-term relationship stuff came to an end, or that, part of my life sort of came to a close. And, my kids were, they were both at school, but then they were, actually out of the house. So there was a lot of adjustment then. Yeah, I went through a bunch of stuff, and then, sort of mental health issues and some recovery issues and all that kind of stuff I've tried to work on before, kind of gone in and out of the work on it. And and had numerous people who I was close to, family and friends, pass away in 2019. And then I was struggling a lot. And then I was sort of getting my head straight. And then Neil Casal, who was supposed to produce my record, my old friend, committed suicide. So that was, it was quite a heavy year. I mean, a lot of growth, but a lot of weight. And
that's the worst thing about growing. There has to be all this pain, and it just sucks.
Yeah, well, I mean, and sometimes we don't grow unless there's a pain, or we won't make a change unless the pain, as they say, the pain is greater than the fear of making the change. It's kind of a wake up call, smack in the face. And so, it was really, really tough, because Neil was my good friend. And then also he was supposed to produce the record. So we had to, there was a lot of emotional stuff. There was, and then adjustment of what to do and handle it. But Neil left, in a long letter he wrote to a lot of people. He, said in the letter he wanted me to just, keep going and finish and we hadn't started recording it, but we had talked a lot about it. And he said, just go ahead and make the record. It's already, the work's already done. Just go in there and do it, and take the guys and go do it. But we were supposed to do the record in California, near Mill Valley, and Neil lived out there in Ventura, and
really?
everybody who was supposed to be.
That's the county
you're from.
That's where I'm from, Simi Valley, which is not too far.
No. It all ties in. And so Dave Schools from Widespread Panic, and played with Jim Askus and the Fog and all that, and a couple other things. Hardworking Americans. He played in Hardworking Americans with Neil, who was him and Jesse Aycock and Todd Snyder, and a couple other guys. We asked him to sort of take over the wheel with producing the record, because I'd already sort of come to the conclusion and been comfortable with not really co-producing the record and having a producer, just so I could just let go. I had a lot going on. I just wanted somebody to handle it all and me just to go in and sing and play the songs and sort of not wear all those hats like I've worn for so many years. And so Neil and Dave had been sending songs back and forth with things they were supposed to produce and had produced anyway. So Dave had heard the songs, and Dave is just a really great guy. And he just, he was hands-on when he needed to be, and also let things happen when they needed to, and just wanted to sort of help the vision of the record happen. And a lot of musical tastes and, musical, we have a lot of tastes in common. And anyway, and because he was so close to Neil, it just made sense. And then everybody who ended up on the record was friends or had music experience with Neil, had made music with him in bands or on records that he'd worked on. So it was sort of it was a cathartic experience, you know. And but anyway, so we decided to do it on the East Coast, and we didn't want to do it in New York City. Some of the guys were from New York and lived in New York City, and some lived further upstate. So we were considering doing it at Levon Helm's studio at the barn, which would have been great, but they don't have a lot of gear there, so you have to bring stuff in to record there because it's mostly a live environment. And so we really wanted like a regular, more standard studio that had, you know, regular console room, and so somebody who was associated with Levon and Amy Helm's band suggested this place, Applehead Recording, just down the road in Woodstock. And you know, they have some of the old gear from Bearsville that, you know, the band and all those cats use. And another fun fact though is the drum kit that we used on the record for this folk rock record was the kit that was used on Bad Brains' Quickness record. So, you know, Dr. No and Daryl live up here, and they've recorded at Applehead, and I think they recorded the Quickness somewhere associated with these guys, but not at the same studio, like when they owned another studio. And it was cool though, because Dr. No stopped in while we were making the record, which was super cool. And then the next day I'm at the coffee shop and I run into Daryl. So I was like, oh man, thanks. You know, I kind of geeked out. I was like, man, thanks for the soundtrack to my youth, you know.
Thanks for existing.
Yeah, no, it was great. And Gary he seems like he's doing healthy, like he's doing well, he's healthier, he's recovering. I don't think he's really playing that much after his stroke, but he is just a super nice guy. I mean, salt of the earth. I've met him now a few times, and just super genuine, just a you can just tell, just a really kind soul, you know, which was good to know, you know, because I was such a big fan when I was a kid, so as we all were.
Yeah, I'm still a fan. Yeah, we all
yeah.
are.
So we geeked out a little bit, and I, you know, I told him how cool it was that that kit was, you know, on the record, and we were chuckling about it, and you know, just talked about the old days, and it was just super cool. You know, I talked to him like 15 or 20 minutes once, and then a little bit the next time he stopped by. So
I love those little surprising encounters with people that you admire, and then you meet them, and it turns out that they're exactly what you were hoping they would be, and it's a nice experience. It doesn't happen all the time to have those experiences, so it's always pretty nice.
No, not always. You know, back in the day with the lubricators, we lucked out and knew a promoter, and so we ended up being like third, fourth band opening on, you know, these hard rock and punk rock shows back in the 80s. And I won't say the ones that we didn't like the people that weren't very nice to us, but you know, some of them were super cool. Like Erie Vaughn was like so nice with Danzig. Like, you know, I was like 15 or 16, and we're walking around the Masquerade, which used to be called the Excelsior Mill in Atlanta, and just you know, and he had no reason to be nice to me. We walked around the place checking it all out and the history of it, and just talked for like 30 minutes. And he didn't have to be that cool to me, you know. We could have gone and hidden on a bus, you know, and like we played with the Circle Jerks back in the day, and Keith was super cool and nice, and you know, you have the association with 7 Seconds, but you know, they were super nice to us too, you know. Probably the ones that I would tell you, you know, you wouldn't be surprised that weren't so nice, that were kind of jerks, you know. They have sort of a lot of reputation, so we'll leave it at that.
Sure. Well, it's cool about I mean, do you have a sense of accomplishment after everything you went through, and especially with what happened to Neil and getting through it and having the cathartic element of it and finishing it? I mean, does this record feel, do you feel any different about this recording than, say, the Six String Drag record or the Mercy Filter record, or is it? Do you even view it that way? I mean, it's kind of a silly.
No, I don't. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess most of the records I've sort of felt compelled to work on them and write the songs, and felt like I needed the experience or that I needed to write it. But this one, sort of like Rather Not Know and the Mercy Filter, they really were like therapy. It was just like I had to kind of get it out there and share it. And
Yeah.
sort of,
But the Mercy Filter also has these sort of jaunty diversions that don't really sound, it's not all, I mean, none of your records are all one thing, but they definitely set the mood. But the Mercy Filter set, there was some cathartic sounding stuff, but then there was some, at least musically, some slight diversions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, there was, the Mercy Filter was sort of like an early recovery record, and so there was a lot of chaos and a lot of, there was a lot of stuff, like you said, there was cathartic that I needed to get out, but it was just a lot younger and a lot newer, a lot of that stuff. And so, whether frustration, anger, and angst and all that stuff was probably coming out, like blowing the pipes out, so to speak, like I needed to blow the demons out. Sure.
Well, the other thing I always thought was like we used to see each other at Cup of Joe and have these nice conversations every once in a while. And one of the questions I sort of want to ask is that I think in one of these conversations, it was quite a while ago, but I think you made the after being both a person in a band, Six String Drag, and then starting your own solo thing, and maybe using some of the same people or whatever, that there was a time when I think you had told me that you just wanted to, like, after trying with the music stuff, that I just want to get an actual job and raise my kids, and I'll just do the thing. It was when your boys were growing up.
Yeah, they were young. Yeah.
And that was sort of a conscious decision a while ago. Was there any point in time, especially maybe around when Six String Drag did the hi-hat record, and were you guys ever at a point where, like, okay, we might be able to do this as our actual job? Did you come close to that? Because I asked this question of I interviewed John Howie a few weeks ago, and he said, well, there was kind of a point, but he just said, well, now I'm just really glad I have something that I do to actually make money, and I never have to worry about that again. Were you ever close to doing that? Because part of my book is about being self-employed and hustling and stuff like that. And I know that you've done some of those things. Was there ever a point where that could have been a reality? And why did you just decide I'm just going to do this, and I'll always have my music, but I'm not going to try to depend upon it for start massive stardom?
Yeah. Well, with the Six String Drag stuff, we had a publishing deal, and it was on a decent sized label, and we had things going in it, and that was the plan, and we we had young families, but we thought we could still do it. And then, we decided to part ways, and, it's long and complicated, but I still, even when I did the Mercury's Blues, still was pursuing, doing music full time, and trying to get the records out and touring and all that stuff. I mean, I always had to pick up odd jobs. The Six String Drive, we were on E Squared, like Rob had the record store, and some people worked here and there doing their things, but I was just picking up hours here and there. And then sort of the same thing with Mercury's Blues. And I guess, still in and out of it, picking up odd jobs up into, like Rather Not Know and all that. And my kids were getting a little bit, older. I wanted to be around more. I was still trying, with the Mercy filter. And then I just sort of, I guess when I quit drinking, it sort of hit me that I had a lot of growing up to do, and that I also needed some discipline, some self-discipline. And I realized that I wanted to try to just have sort of a daily routine and not the chaos of always hustling, and sort of have some stability within and in my surroundings, and still write and learn. And so that's when I got a regular job. I worked at an insurance company. And I did that. I started off in the mailroom, and then I moved up to a sort of a IT and administrative assistant, kind of technical assistant, just using the skills I learned from recording music on my own, just sort of snuck in the door.
Sure.
And then I went to school. I was like, well, I don't know. I still want to work a regular job. I mean, as far as I still want to, try to have a regular routine, but I don't know if it's, working an office job. So I went to massage school because I had a hip issue, and like a lot of therapists, whether they're mental health professionals or physical, they sort of go into it trying to figure out their own stuff. They realize they're fascinated with it. So I realized I was really trying to learn what was going on with my hip and my back. I became sort of fascinated with going to different therapies and learning about different modalities and anatomy and the body and how it works, and kinesiology and the physiology of things. And so I went to massage school at night while I was working in the day full time. And then eventually I quit my day job and was a massage therapist. So then I was doing music more again. That's when I started to, I'd actually started writing memories, and it was crazy. I was writing the Memories and Birds record in the morning when I'd wake up like 5 or 6 in the morning, and that's why it's kind of a quiet record. I would sit in the basement and quietly strum songs and sing them, into a recorder or whatever. And then I would go work at my day job, and then I'd go to massage school at night. It was like a modern day Leuven Brothers routine, working at the mill and being on the radio and making records. It was total hustle.
That seems kind of awesome in a way, because that sounds like the discipline that you were kind of hoping for. Like here's, when you have kids, especially, everything's different. So here's this window of time I have for myself to do this thing. Then here's this other thing,
Not to mention at the time I was helping coach baseball teams and all that stuff. It was a little overachieving. I am an addict, even if I'm not using, I was sort of workaholicing, but that's okay. I got enough energy.
Yeah.
But I don't do that so much anymore. I just do music, and that's sort of been my thing. I decided, when everything happened this last year, that I was just, I was working at a friend's coffee shop on campus at Duke for a couple of years, and touring in the summers when we weren't working, and still doing massage here and there. I've done that for the last 8 or 9 years, just on and off, and part-time. I don't have my license here in New York. It's such a pain, but that's another story, to transfer between states and licensing. Yeah, I'm in Woodstock. Yeah, I moved up to Woodstock. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. How long ago?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought you were still
in the early winter. No, December. See, it's funny, in a pandemic, we don't see each other anyway, right? Yeah, nobody's at the coffee shop. But when I came up to make the record, I just loved it up here. I was actually considering California, just to change a pace and live somewhere. I knew it was going to be so expensive.
What part of California were you toying with going to?
I was thinking Northern California.
That's
or maybe Southern Oregon, but somewhere on the West Coast. I had toured out there a couple summers and really loved it. And I thought, well, we'll go make the record out there, hang out with Neil some, visit some other friends. I had some friends out there. but then, you know, life happens and changes happen, and before you know it, I end up here in New York, you know. But
Hey, it's
I just,
beautiful.
I love it up here. It reminds me a lot of upstate South Carolina and Western North Carolina, same mountain range. And, you know, I like the vibe. It's a small town, sort of liberal, not, well, not sort of liberal, pretty liberal, you know, pocket in the middle of sort of the country. Yeah, I've met a lot of people up here, and sort of part of the music scene, but just sort of part of the life scene as well. Because the music scene just doesn't really exist much right now since the pandemic. But it was
Yeah.
funny. I was holed up and, you know, living up on the side of a mountain during the winter, pretty isolated. Um, and I'd go visit with people at the coffee shop like we did and stuff. But back in the day, and then the pandemic hit. I was like, man, I'm super practiced at this isolation thing.
Well, I'm
Living
kind of good at it too because I don't really like being around a lot of people because I'm introverted, and
oh yeah, this is like
then somewhat it's not paradise. I mean, having the choice removed from
no.
me to do it is a real drag. But you know, at the same time, it's like, well, at least I'm not an extrovert climbing the walls. So
Yeah, and you know, I'm a little more balanced than you know, I've learned to sort of sit with things a little bit more. Um, being, you know, I mean, I have introverted ways, and then, you know, I'm outgoing as well, or extroverted, or whatever you want to call it. In some ways, and super social, but I also need breaks and to be alone a lot, as well. And I've found a lot more balance, you know, now living alone for the first time in forever. You know, I mean, not always. I grew up the youngest in a large family, and lived with friends until I was married, and then I was married for a lot of years and just never really lived alone, you know. And so, but I like it, and I don't love the option of not being able, like you said, being able to be around people when I want to be.
yeah, of course.
But I'm okay with solitude. You know, I'm not okay with isolation. You know, that's just not it's so healthy. You know, but
No,
I'm
there's
okay with
definitely
being alone. Yeah, and yeah, I'm okay with drive around alone a lot, and you know, go for bike rides and walks and sit at the house. And I don't like to just be trapped in one room. You know,
yeah.
but I like my time alone.
Well, the only real drag I can see about this is that you're just a little too late to move into a house with a bunch of guys. Pretend that you can do like a music from the Big Pink kind of thing, since you're up there in that
Yeah,
community.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah, a little too old for that, and that was sort of lightning in a bottle too. You know.
I like
Uh,
reading lots of people that talk about how they're going to do that, as if they're going to get the same results as the band. Yeah, we're just going to move into
yeah,
this house in New York, and it's like music from the Big Pink. What could go wrong? I think I'm the only person that, after I got really into the band, I'm not really a big fan of the Last Waltz movie.
hmm
I understand the significance, but I just always thought, man, if somebody thought about making a movie, it should have been 1970 or something. Because if you watch any clip of them playing,
Oh, it's amazing.
it's amazing. It's like, and I appreciate it. And for a while there, I was like, yeah. And then I was like, well, this is kind of like not their fault. I wish there was a movie of them in 1970 or even 71. Because
Yeah.
that would have
Well, watch that Robbie documentary or whatever, because it's, you know, and it is from his perspective. It's meant to be from his story, his telling the story, you know, from his perspective, and it's not completely, you know, biased in some ways. I mean, he's fair in some ways, but I really don't know. But there's great footage in it, you know, really great footage. Um, but yeah, the last waltz, you know, it was so formidable when I was getting into the band and
oh
watching
yeah,
it a bunch, and just, you
it
know,
was. I
but
mean, to me,
now it's a little hard to watch it, go back and watch it, especially knowing how some of it was made, and sort of how, you know, a lot of it was overdubbed and stuff. It's like, you know, it's, but
yeah,
still, it's still entertaining,
it's
you
still
know, and
it's
it's
still
still a great gateway for people, you know, and a chance to see those guys with high quality film and how they were on stage and all. You know, it's got a lot of, it's not perfect, but it's got a lot of
and it has Neil Diamond showing up, which is
yeah, don't dry your eyes, Brian.
Try your eyes. I'm going to ask you a few more questions and let you go. Most of the interview,
Okay.
This is sort of like when you moved up here, and after the lubricators were over, and then when Six String Drag started. In my mind, since I've lived here for so long, there were like three sort of phases of things that brought people here. And the first phase is what brought me here, which was sort of in the mid 80s or 86, was corrosion of conformity back then, putting this area on the map. And then I think in the early 90s, it was, I guess, Super Chunk and Merge Records and the attention that they brought to not just Chapel Hill, 30 minutes away from the whole community. Yeah. Then I always thought the next wave was basically what happened that was not really centered around a place like Satellax, but there was like there was a wave of all these bands that were influenced by, they weren't influenced by punk rock, and they weren't influenced by more, use these terms like rootsy or country-esque or whatever, but there was like a whole wave of stuff that happened, and what you were doing, you were kind of swept up in it. When you look back on that, was that like an exciting time? And do you think that the association of that community, was that a help for you or a hindrance? That's a good question.
Well, first off, like, it's weird because we sort of had, we had the Raleigh history, a little bit of the knowledge, because like I lived in Chapel Hill when I guess it was 87 for a summer. Yeah, I moved up when my brother was going to school there, going to graduate school. And so I came up and lived with him. So I met a lot of like the Chapel Hill cats, and like when the 86, 87 or whatever, like when the Dickies were playing there, and, everybody was playing at the Cradle, like a Core's first show in Chapel Hill, and sort of like the tail end of some of the punk rock hardcore stuff before the indie rock thing took off, when, it was still like COC was still playing some, and I loved, I loved Animosity, and I loved COC, and back in South Carolina. So, and we also had some friends, we were friends with the Accelerators guys. And so, and then because Johnny had a strong connection with those guys and some other people in Chapel Hill and Raleigh, the Lubricators were considering moving to Atlanta. We wanted to move somewhere as a band, and we thought, let's try Raleigh. We know some people there. It's still small enough. It's got a lot of history and cool clubs to play, and knowing the guys in Finger and the Accelerators and that thing. So we were sort of a little bit more on the Raleigh side of things. We moved up here, and so I guess we were kind of in between those, the people that moved here in the 80s, and so we had our feet still in that, but not quite. Like I don't even know if I really knew who Superchunk was when I moved up here in 1991. And so but actually, about 93 was sort of both those things happened at once, I think, like the indie rock explosion, the Chapel Hill thing, the early 90s, like what, 90 to 94, 95. A lot, we all sort of had, sort of like a lot of us, the tennis route associations, and knowing a lot of those people. And so, and Six String Drag formed in 93. And I moved back to South Carolina, and then I moved back to Raleigh. And yeah, so we sort of, a lot of us, like Howie and me, we sort of came out of the hard rock and punk rock thing, and we're doing the roots rock thing. Yeah, I think it was cool. It was a cool scene because a lot of people knew each other already, and we all liked that kind of music. I mean, the Lubricators used to cover, like, we used to do rock and punk rock, but also we'd cover like Buck Owens' Tiger by the Tail. So like, I in my teens, I was listening to a lot of bluegrass and country rock also, because I had friends who were really into that. Like I've talked to you about my friend Ed Campbell, who was huge, like Beefheart and Minutemen fan, but also had a bluegrass band, and loved Randy Newman and loved Mott the Hoople, and Alice Cooper and stuff. But also he's worship Bill Monroe, you know, so I'd sit around in my teenage years listening to records with him. And yeah, so we were totally into that stuff, and Dylan, and, you know, like a lot of us, we've liked so many kinds of music. But yeah, as far as a hindrance or whatever, no, I don't think so. I think it was a cool community, you know. I mean, there was, and even then, you know, it's like we were talking about our record release show for Hi-Hat, you know, in '97. And it was like the Drovers, Ed's band, the Drovers Old Time Medicine Show, the Bluegrass Old Timey Band, the Chickens, the Tone Benders, and us. Like, that was our record release show. So it wasn't like this roots rock, alt country only. It was more just friends, you know, just a lot of buddies hanging out that we always said we'd listen to, you know, all kinds of stuff hanging out. You know, and Skillet, you know, being a South Carolina guy, it was sort of the same way. I was like listening to George Jones and whatever, something, you know, Killdozer or something. I don't know. Big Black, you know. I mean, we liked whatever.
George Jones, Big Black, it's all good. It just goes back.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's good.
You know,
like it. It's good.
They both use a drum machine sometimes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was a really cool scene. I mean, I think back on it, sort of. I mean, not super nostalgic, but I look back on it as a good time. You know, it was great. You know, and then there was also like a little bit older component than us. You know, like guys, the Backsliders and the Accelerators had been around a little bit longer. Was sort of more in the '80s rock and roll, cowpunk wave. That were doing these new bands that were forming in the '90s, you know, and then Brad from the Accelerators and Finger was in the Backsliders, and so it was a lot of sort of incestuous stuff and cross pollination. So yeah, it was a great time. And then later, I think a little bit later, it got to be more of a thing where it was a less rooted in punk rock and the Three Chords and the Truth thing. I think it became a little bit like in the bands that were around more in the early 2000s, you know, were a little bit less rooted in that older Raleigh, Chapel Hill scene, you know.
I don't know who you're referring to because it all bleeds together.
Yeah, like I said, like the North Carolina scene, it sort of was like the Avett Brothers, you know, like the late '90s, early 2000s. So some of the people were sort of influenced by some of those bands from the '90s, and just a little bit younger, you know, like about 5 or 10 years younger than us, you know.
Yeah.
And then sort of like that, the Roots thing became more like a little bit more hippie and a little more bluegrass and jam band. You know, it just sort of went down that road. And then the Americana thing was a little bit more folky, a little bit more saccharine. I hate to use that negative term, but it's sort of, you know, yeah, a little bit more, a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, well, that's very good bedside manner.
I mean, I don't even know like specific bands, dude, but you know, it just seemed like it was a little less like.
Now
that,
I just,
you know?
so much time has passed that I can't really segment things that have happened, except for really the '80s, because that was my coming of age decade.
Yeah.
And everything afterwards, it's like it all just weaved together. And then by the early 2000s, it seemed like nostalgia caught up with everybody, and now there's nothing. There's still music, but there's nothing to backpedal to mine. It's like now it's just like all these hybrids of things, you know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's just as a listener of music, and also admittingly somebody that doesn't really have his pulse on the finger of what the kids might want to do. Or
yeah, I don't really either. I mean, I'm old, you know. I mean, I don't really. Yeah, I just don't. I mean, I end up like buying old records. I kind of go backwards still. You know, I still hear stuff that I like. I'm not like, oh man, there's no good music now. I mean, I still hear stuff. That's really great.
There's always
great stuff. I just don't seek it out as much as I used to, and I don't grab it like I sort of still gravitate. And you know, even back then, I just sort of gravitated to old music. There's so much out there. You know, you get into jazz or blues or R&B. Even just like folk stuff. If you get into like say 60s and 70s like British folk stuff. You know, there's so much out there that's so good.
Like Pentangle and the Fairport
Yeah,
Convention.
yeah, and like Bert Chance and stuff like that, and just some obscure people, you know, where you're just like, oh, I've never heard of that before. I can't even think of any off the top of my head, but you know, there's just so much to explore. And R&B, it happens to me all the time, and blues stuff and country stuff. Not as much with country because I was sort of into the old bluegrass and honky tonk and hillbilly stuff a little bit more, but definitely like, you know, some '60s R&B. You know, I'll find stuff and I'm like, who is that? And I was like, oh, that's great. You know, of course I'm brain part now, but yeah,
Yeah, there's always
so
stuff
much.
Well, hey man, thanks a lot for doing this. My last,
Yeah, man.
I have a question, but I haven't learned the subtle art of including links to what people are selling or you know.
Yeah.
Is there any information I can ask for? Like if people who don't already know who you are come to this and they're curious about obtaining some of your music or some information about you, where should they go?
I mean, there's my website, kennyroby.net, and you know, Instagram and Facebook and social media type stuff is probably
And all your and a lot of
Bandcamp and all that stuff.
is
All my
a lot,
records are the only record that's not available streaming as far as the main services is Mercury's Blues, and that's available on Bandcamp. So everything else is available digitally, and you can order it through, you know, website or Bandcamp, or listen to it on the services or YouTube channel, all that stuff. Yeah, the usual outlets.
awesome.
Just not Wikipedia. That's some old shit on there.